Hello? Hello? Hello, Ahmed.
Hello, Professor. How are you?
How are you today?
Uh, okay. Sorry for bothering you yesterday.
No, not at all. That's what we do. We don't necessarily get paid a lot of money to do it, but we do it for the enjoyment that it brings us. And many years of experience has confirmed or reaffirmed or affirmed that this is what I most enjoy doing.
Thank you, Professor. But Professor, I'm still confused. Okay, for chapter 10 and 11, what are we
Yes.
supposed to do? Are we supposed to do the multiple choice for both chapters, or one chapter multiple choice and the other chapter study questions?
Okay. No doubt that this is my unfamiliarity with Moodle and the way that it was presented. But
Mhm.
for the remaining weeks of class, Ahmed, just consider that as the instructor, my intention is to monitor the students' um, familiarity of each chapter. So consider that each week. Um, the test questions, the multiple choice questions will be a requirement. I look at the study questions. Sometimes they seem to be a bit complicated for what I feel might be appropriate for students. Knowing in real estate, you don't ever get to that depth or level of instruction that you need to know some of these things. So always the test questions, the multiple choice questions, will be required of you. Um, the study questions, what I'll do is if I don't get to them during our conversation, I always consider them as extra credit assignments. Um, because the mistake uh, I made in 10 and 11, which is two chapters, is that uh, each assignment has to be placed separately. So for the grade book where grades are entered, they're kept separately. And this was the mistake I made this week. I attempted to correct it yesterday by assigning the assignment for 10 in one location and the assignment for 11 in the other location. But always the test questions so that I can get a feel for your understanding of the chapter and to my satisfaction, everyone's doing very well. I mean, I would think some of them I may see two right out of 10, but I'm getting a number of responses, 10 of 10, and then I don't think I could get 10 of 10 if I were to sit down and do it coldly. So yes, just as test questions for sure. And if there's any additional study questions, they'll be considered as extra credit. And go to your grade, of course. Nothing will be asked of you that does not contribute to your final grade.
Okay, Professor. Because I did 10 and 11, and
Hmm.
after that, I did the study questions for 11.
Yes.
And
Okay.
I was stuck. I was not able, and till now, I'm not able to upload them to model. That's why I sent your
Yeah.
WhatsApp.
Yes. It's okay. Excuse me, nobody will be I will use, being that this is my first introduction to Moodle and to this particular course, and not having had the good pleasure of meeting the students at some previous occasion to know you and know and know how well you work. We'll use the study questions as extra credit assignments. And now with the break um, beginning, well, today will be our last day for 2 weeks. So I'll review all of that and provide some feedback, but it won't go against in any way your grade. It'll only contribute toward your grade, your final grade.
Thank you, Professor.
Oh, Leah, hello. Do we have you? Ahmed, we can begin. I have 9:12. We'll give it just 3 more minutes and then begin at 9:15. Always the last session before a little break. Some people begin the break sooner. The weather's been a bit chilly down here, and I have to admit that I do have a very bad cold, as do other family members. So um, perhaps we'll finish the material and then call it a day. Um, so let's just give it the 3 more minutes. Hi, Judy Lynn, how are you?
Oh, hi, good morning, Professor. I'm searching for the link, but I cannot find. Thank you for sending me. Amen.
Okay. And how's everything in Western Canada today?
It's cold. It's -3.
Okay. I just get nervous thinking about that, trying to imagine what life could be in -3 degrees.
Oh, yes, yes.
Is it,
So,
do you have a lot of snow?
oh, it is snow because some in my part of Canada have snow, but in my part is still not yet.
Oh, okay.
It's
Do you,
just
yeah.
it's just rainy, keep on raining here.
Oh boy. Do you have to do you work from home, or do you have to go out in this weather to go to work or to school or something?
I need to go out, so and I need to drive for 15 minutes. It's close.
Oh, okay. How would you prevent your car, let's say battery, from not charging? Do you keep your car in a heated garage of any sort, or is it out in the street,
Just in the driveway.
in the driveway? And
Yeah.
you don't have trouble getting it started in the morning?
No, as long as every day you are driving it. Mm,
Good. I know I had some conversation with students in Minnesota, and they keep like warmers or something. They plug in engine warmers or something that goes on top of the engine or the battery at night. You have to have access to an electrical outlet to kind of keep the interior part of the car warmed up or heated, so they can drive it in the morning, or else they wouldn't be able to start the car.
Just in other part, if it's -40 like that, yes, they do.
Oh, that's the magic number. If it gets to -14, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, let's begin. As I was just mentioning, I do have a bad cold. We're all kind of uh, not feeling too well, so perhaps we'll finish up a bit earlier. Um, let me go over the schedule once again, as I have to account for my uh, mishandling of Moodle on occasion. Um, Today will be our last meeting for 2 weeks. We'll come back on the January 3rd. I posted in Moodle. I gave you 5 study questions uh, for a midterm exam, and I said you can select 4 of the 5. So if there's any problem opening that, just uh, send me a message on chat, and then I'll get back to you on it. So your midterm exam is already posted. Um, we'll go over 12 today, which is in contrast to some of the earlier ones, a very practical or applied chapter dealing with the type of material that realtors, people who are involved in buying and selling of real estate, are involved in every day. There is a difference, and I'm sure I've mentioned it, between the practical nature of real estate as demonstrated by the people who work in it every day, people in the field, uh, and the academic version of real estate, which goes into things like the history of certain concepts, definitional discussions, things like mortgages. Uh, uh, so that gap between the two is actually very profound. If I were to take uh, 10 practicing realtors and sat them down and asked them to take any of the study questions or multiple choice test questions, I would be surprised if anyone would pass the course, simply because there's no reason to address any of the more academic issues of real estate that we discuss here in class. So it is quite interesting, and I find the same thing I'm also asked to teach the pre-licensing course here in my area. That's the course you would take if you wanted to become a realtor. In that course, it's actually very similar to what we discuss here. It's a more academic look at real estate, the laws, the penalties for committing an error, but very little on the application, excuse me, practicality, which is a bit odd since you're taking the test to become a realtor. But because of the differences within Florida in the different counties and the way they administer and legislate real estate, I guess the state in their publications prefers that you focus on the academic side of real estate and leave it to your individual office or company you work for to handle the practicality, the applied side of real estate. But so anyway, there is, again, different sort of perspectives in dealing with the field of real estate. Let me go over the answers to 10. We'll kind of leave 11.
Oh yeah, Professor, I didn't yet admit my 10 and 11 because I don't know what happened to how you do the model, the sequence in the model. It's too confusing. Did one of
Okay,
our
well,
classmates that?
okay. All right. Well, because we have the break coming up, I won't then discuss the answers to 10 or 11 if you have done it, but I think 10 should be okay. 10 and 11 should be okay. I'll look at it again, Judy Lynn, after we finish, but it should be okay to upload them. I'll give the class some extra time to do it. So I won't look at it until a few days later, but it should be okay to upload the excuse me, at least the test questions, the multiple choice questions to Moodle. I don't think there should be a problem. I'll check it once we finish, but I won't then discuss the answers to 10 or 11. We didn't really get to 11, but I didn't think 11 was that important for us. I thought in the very beginning of the course that I was going to have to cover all of the chapters, which usually I do in any book or any course that I'm teaching. But then after talking to I guess Sarah, we just changed that a little bit, understanding your situation that you're finishing, that sort of
Professor,
thing. So, yes,
yeah, we cannot upload anything to Moodle now. It's
you can.
yeah, no, we cannot.
You cannot. My gosh,
Yes,
I wonder what
because the last day mentioned is 19 December.
I
So
see.
if you can
Okay,
open it,
okay. Actually, I can do that on my desktop. Let me do that right now. Okay, I extended it to Friday the 22nd, so it should be okay. So it will send it uploaded, and I'll look at it. If not the end of the weekend, I'll do it next week. Okay, thanks, Ahmed. Chapter 12 is a chapter, as I'm saying, that applies to the daily activities of real estate professionals. I'll sort of give you a sort of descriptive historical look on all of this. Uh, the profession of selling real estate and buying real estate for others, one becomes a realtor after taking a test. The concept of realtor is one that applies to everyone that's working in the capacity of buying and selling. And this is the key concept involved in buying and selling in real estate and making a commission for the sale of properties or the purchase of properties. If you are paid a salary and you are working for a developer or a company, whatever it is, you're working within the field of real estate, but you cannot use the designation of realtor. The word realtor comes from the National Association of Realtors, NAR, which all realtors, all people working for commission in the field of real estate have an opportunity to belong to. The NAR, National Association of Realtors, is perhaps the largest organization of professionals in the U.S. So being a member of the NAR, you have the distinction of being a member of the largest group of professionals, of industry professionals, I believe, in the U.S. The industry is divided into just really two occupations. If you take your state exam and pass it, you are called a sales agent. That is your designation. The states, let me just step back a second. As I've mentioned previously, the practice of real estate is, for the most part, legislated at the state level. There are very few occasions where the federal government of the U.S. has imposed any policies or restrictions or laws over the 50 states. Any occasion by which they've had to enter the field of real estate, it's been more in the legal aspects, because you can't have necessarily states, each state having sort of a different law. The federal government actually permits that, and there's examples of that every single day in the newspaper. But there are some sort of dominant issues that the federal government feels it is it has to step into, and one of them we have already mentioned in the class, and that is the area of disclosure. Rather than leave it to each state to have its own policies regarding disclosure, disclosure meaning what has to be revealed.
Professor, did you
Yeah.
open the?
Oh yeah.
Did you-
Okay. I'll do it now. I'm just kind of uh, talking about just about the field. Can you see that now, Judy Lynn?
No.
Okay. Okay, I don't know why we always seem to have okay, here we go. Let's see. Can you see it?
Yes.
Hello? You
Yes.
got it now? Okay, good. Okay, I'm getting better at this. I really feel, good about it. Okay. Um, all right. So let me again continue with the sort of historical perspective on all of this. Uh, the federal government in one particular issue, disclosure has passed a law that applies to all of the states. And that is that if you are selling a property, you have to disclose everything that you know about that particular property. Has there been any repairs to the property? Is there any issues that a buyer should know before buying that property? That is a federal requirement that each person involved in real estate has to accept and reveal to the next person. If you're a buyer, the seller has to know. If you're a seller, the buyer has to know. Uh, that is one of the few occasions where the federal government has stepped in. So for the most part, real estate legislation, rules, regulations, things like that are determined at the state level. Now, Florida is a large state, the state I'm most familiar with, and has a number, I think 22 different counties, but I'm not sure. I would have to check that. Each of the counties has its own real estate board. So I am a member of the Southwest Florida Real Estate Board. Now, I can become a member of any other board if I wish. I'd have to pay money to do so. But because the business that I conduct and the knowledge I have of real estate is in this area only, I am a member only of this board, the Southwest Florida Real Estate Board. So each board has its own determination regarding the way contracts are written, things like that. So getting back to the point I was saying, if you wish to become a realtor, regardless of which county, regardless of what state you live in, if you pass that state's exam, you are a sales agent. Now, most states, including Florida, says you can move up to the next level of real estate by becoming a real estate broker. They don't like you to do that. They don't allow you to do that. Let's say you take the sales test today and you pass it, and now you're an agent. You cannot say, I'm going to take the broker's test tomorrow. As the state wants you to acquire experience and knowledge before allowing you to become a broker. So after you've been in the business for a few years, you can take a course to become a broker. Now, what a broker allows you to do is to open your own office. You can open your own brokerage office. You can hire sales agents and other brokers. I am a broker. However, I do not have my own office. I attempted to do so. I just had the urge to consider doing it, maybe to my good fortune or maybe to my misfortune. I was thinking of doing it a little bit before COVID hit, so sometime around 2019. And so my plans were put on hold, and now as we enter 2024, for the most part, I haven't really returned to consider that. So I am a broker. I am a broker working with another broker who has an office. So if you are a broker, you can have your own office. You then can, excuse me, recruit sales agents and people, if they may have a brokerage license, to have them as well. And there you have a real estate office. You are licensed within the state of Florida, or whatever state you are. And as a requirement for both a sales agent and a broker, we must have a continuing education course every 2 years. Every 2 years, the state of Florida expects you to take a course in your field, if you're a sales agent or a broker, a course, and then you can renew your license. If you don't take that course, you cannot renew your license. So the difference between being a broker or a sales agent, if you say, well, why should I go and study to become a broker, spend a little money to take the class, is because you feel maybe at one day you'd like to either open your own office or manage your own office. I've had a few occasions where I've been asked to manage, but I didn't feel it was really the right fit. So I didn't pursue that. So right now I'm simply associated with a realtor in this area. You are not considered an employee of a realtor if you're working in real estate. You are an independent contractor. That distinction is important for tax purposes. If you have any familiarity with working here in the States, you would get a W-2 form at the end of the year, which you will submit when you pay your taxes, that says that you are an employee of a company and you pay your taxes. As a realtor, now again, I'm using the word realtor to include both sales agents and brokers who work in the field on a commission basis. Realtors would receive a 1099 form, which is an independent contractor's form, which says how much commission you have made in that particular year. The first, I guess, requirement once you become a realtor is to try to convince people, buyers or sellers, that they in fact need a realtor. We'll get to that as we continue. The text uses the word broker. I think it's using it, but for sure it's using it in combination of sales agents and brokers. The reason it's saying brokers is because it's looking at the office itself. Remember, you cannot open a real estate office unless there is a broker involved. The broker may own the office in the sense that he or she is paying the rent, is recruiting the agents, is handling all of the administrative functions. The owner may be on premises, may be there, or it could be an investor type owner. If it's an investor type owner, then there has to be a broker at that office. In fact, what the state requires is the broker's name appears on the entrance to the office. So if I opened an office and I wanted to use Sunshine Realty in Florida, because one thing we get for sure down here is a lot of sunshine. If I were to say and use that name, Sunshine Realtor, I would have to put broker Jerry Breshin, broker. So anybody who has any issues would know who the broker is. Bring buyers and sellers together. And collect commission for a successful transaction. The hardest thing probably to do is to convince somebody, a potential buyer or seller, that they need your services. The state and federal government have no problem with you buying or selling real estate for yourself without using a realtor. A person we have down in Florida, you see it, if you go out 5 minutes, you'll see 10 signs, people putting signs on their property. And it says for sale, and if it's a house, you'll see the house right in back of the sign. People, there's no problem doing that. If you were riding in your car and you saw a house that you really liked in an area that you really like, you have no problem stopping off, knocking on the guy's door and saying, this is a very nice house. How much you want to sell it for? And if the seller says, well, I want to sell it for $300,000, you say, fine, I'll buy it. You can actually do that without a license. As long as you're buying or selling for yourself. The same way the seller can sell his own property to anybody. There's no problem with that. What you cannot do is sell someone else's property. You cannot engage in a real estate transaction for someone else. This subject could take a few hours, so I'll try to be brief just with this subject itself. What do you say to a client, a prospective buyer or seller, who says, in blunt terms, why do I need a realtor? Why do I need you? In a very nice way, what you should say is something to the extent that a real estate transaction involves a very significant amount of money. You are entering into a contractual relationship with the other party. If you're a buyer, it's with the seller, and the seller is with the buyer. You need to protect yourself. You need someone who understands the fine print of a contract. Because even if the buyer and seller are doing it between themselves and do not need a realtor, you, as let's say the buyer, have to be sure you'll still have a contract. A seller who is not using a realtor is not going to say to you, extend his hand into a handshake and say, okay, give me a check for 300,000 and here's the keys. A transaction is far more complex than that. As we discussed earlier in the course, there is evidence of ownership, which is called a deed. You have to be sure that you are going to get a deed that is not a fake deal. I may have mentioned early in the course as well, there have been occasions of fraud in the real estate. Let's say someone is renting a home. We have plenty of renters here in Florida, people getting away from the cold weather up north, or in Europe, they come to Florida and they rent the property. And looking in the drawer of the owner, they may find a canceled check. But they would know, of course, the owner's name. But let's say they see the owner's name, they see maybe his address, which they don't have to know when they rent it, and maybe a copy of let's say, the signature of the seller. It was a canceled check. So what could a renter do who is dishonest and has criminal intent? Well, he says, let me see if I can sell this property. Puts a sign, goes to the local uh, hardware store, buys a blank sign, and puts for sale. Whatever, 300,000. Some guy walks to the door and says, "Yeah, let me look around." You okay? I'll buy. What do you want? Oh, well, I'll tell you. Give me 250 and it's yours. Here's the keys. The buyer says, "Okay, that looks like a good deal. Let's do it." Okay, so you get the keys. The seller walks away with your check. You move in, and you find out at a later date when the actual owner comes to town and wonders who you are and why you're living in his house. That has happened. So you want to tell the prospective buyer and seller that you have knowledge of real estate contracts. You know how to protect, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, against any criminal activity, any signs of fraud, how to protect your buyer and seller in case there's something about the home that should serve as a warning and for you as a buyer not to proceed. There's a number of escape routes, escape doors that a buyer can walk out without losing their initial deposit, their escrow deposit, their good faith deposit. And that's basically the argument you want to give to the person you are representing, that you have intimate knowledge of the contracts, that you can keep appraised your client. You can inform them when they can leave a transaction before, of course, it's effectuated. If they feel they have some doubt about the home. In that little example that I'm giving, let's say a buyer sees a sign in a building. It's a condominium. And the buyer says something, sees a sign, knocks on the door, and the seller says, "Yeah, I want to sell, time to go. I know we need a bigger place or a smaller place." And the buyer says, "Fine, okay, I'll give you a check and give me the keys." Then the buyer finds out that condo community is almost bankrupt. Why? Because the condo community, every condo community by law must have a board of directors. And those board of directors maintain the community in the best way they can. They collect money from each of the owners, that's called condo fees, in order to maintain that condo community. Their money goes for, in the largest part, for insurance. As you know, Florida can get some bad weather a few times a year. We have hurricanes here. It can be devastating on some communities. So the money goes for primarily insurance. It goes for landscaping. If you've been down here, in 2 days, you'll see grass grow about 2 inches or something. So you have to have a landscaping contract with somebody. The pool has to be cleaned once a week to be sure it's not has any bacteria in it. There has to be added chemicals. There may be a necessity to have security area, a guy riding around in a car, or somebody calls that there's a problem, a break-in, so they need somebody to go and check it out. So the buyer says, "Fine, we'll take the place," and then walks in and finds out that because of the very bad economic decision situation for the board of directors, every owner will have to pay $5,000. It's called an assessment. We have had a number of them over the years because of the hurricanes. A board of directors is not supposed to be a profit-making organization. It is supposed to have enough money on hand to manage the community. It's not supposed to make a profit, but it's not supposed to operate with a loss. If it doesn't have enough money to cover the expenses, you have a problem. And after we've had some really bad weather like hurricanes, and they say we simply don't have enough money to put up new trees, to fix the landscaping, so each family will have to give us a check for $5,000. That is not unusual and can be difficult for elderly people who are living just on their pension or Social Security and may not be able to write a check for $5,000. So a realtor has knowledge of contracts, has knowledge of the area, and can provide the buyer with information about the community, whether the community is financially safe or not. So, as I said, I can talk to you for about 2 hours on this subject, but it's your knowledge of real estate in this community, your knowledge of the contractual side of real estate, and also whether if a realtor can say to a client, maybe now is not the best time to buy. Maybe you should wait a few months, or maybe it's not the right time to sell. So really, that's the emotional part of the relationship between the realtor and the client. Just their knowledge of the situation. And now, why do real estate prices change? Well, it's a function of supply and demand. It's also a function of the state of the economy. Interest rates have come down a bit. The long-term mortgage rates, and the market's picking up a little bit, but it may not be a good time to sell or to buy based on the economy. So this is what brokers do. If they're good brokers and good sales agents, they're studying the economy. It's a serious position for them, and they are the experts in the community. Okay, the second part of what brokers do and why you need a license to be either a sales agent or a broker is because you are collecting a commission for that transaction. A commission can not be fixed. If a buyer says to you, okay, I want to buy this place, what is my commission to you if I buy this place? You cannot say, well, our company charges 5% of the selling price as a commission. That is something you cannot say. Commissions have to be negotiated between the buyer and the seller. If, for example, a seller offers a 6% commission to sell his house, then the agent that represents the seller and the agent that brings the buyer will split that 6%, 3% for each one of them. That's how it works. Now, here in Florida, the commission to the realtors. Now, someone who has represents a seller, and that's called having a listing. It's your listing. If you find a buyer, then you can keep the full commission. So if you have listings, in other words, you have sellers, and you can find buyers, that is a very lucrative deal for you. A little more in detail, I won't bother you with, but essentially, yes, you can have both sides of that transaction. What special knowledge can a broker, again, we're talking a broker as a sales agent and the broker himself or herself. Okay, prices and terms, marketing approaches, legal obligation, properties in market, potential customers, procedures and requirements. The encompassing principle here is in Florida is called the law of agency. That permits the broker, meaning the broker, let me backtrack again. Let me get back. Okay, I said that the realtor refers to sales agents and to brokers. Uh, the broker that I'm referring to here is the broker whose name the office is under. Even if it's something like Sunshine Realtor, if I'm the broker, Jerry Breshin is the broker, then I am obligating my employees, my agents, under the law of agency. That means that I have the responsibility to work on behalf of a buyer or seller. We'll combine both of them and refer to that buyer and seller as a principal. In other words, the law of agency is saying that you as a broker have the right to act on behalf of your client. And as a consequence of you having the right to act on behalf of your client, you are obligated to follow certain responsibilities, which we'll see in a minute. In other words, the law of agency is legal. It's a legal concept, which saying if you are acting as a broker and the people beneath you, such as sales agents, you are obligated to behave in a certain way to represent your client. Everybody, any broker, anyone with an office that's under his or her name is obligated to follow the same responsibilities to the person you are acting on behalf of. You are responsible for how your sales agents and anyone that's working with you, sales agents, and if you have any brokers that are working for you, you have to be sure that they act in line with the various responsibilities. It's not uncommon for an agent or a broker to be asked to leave a broker's office, simply because they violate maybe certain understandings. Maybe their behavior was not, maybe not illegal, but considered unethical. And an agent, a realtor is asked to leave. That's not unusual. It's not very nice to have happen to you. Feel, excuse me. Uh, Fortunately, in my 18 years, it has not happened to me, even though I have changed a few times, but changed brokers. Okay, types of agents, power and principle to act in all matters within the limits of business, special agent power to act in. Okay, that's really not like relevant to us. You are simply acting as a principal. You are um you could say that the guy who runs the office, who owns it, or is the broker of record in the sense that he manages it, is a universal agent in its complexity, in its totality. But since you are working with a client for a specific purpose, a buyer wants to buy a property, a seller wants to sell a property, you're actually acting in the capacity of a special agent because your role is only to buy or sell a specific property for a client, buyer or seller. The another point that I should mention regarding the sales agents and the broker who owns or manages the office, a sales agent is is almost like an assistant to the broker. If a commission is earned by a sales agent is able to buy or sell a property. That commission check is written in the name of the broker. If a sales agent can get a listing agreement, meaning he's found somebody who wants to sell a property and fills out the contracts, which we will see uh, in a bit, that contract, that listing contract that says that you let Sunshine Realty sell your property, that contract is signed by the broker, the person who owns or is the manager of the office. It's not in the name of the sales agent. A typical situation can arise when a sales agent who has a listing or a number of them decides to leave and go to work with another broker for whatever reason. That sales agent can say to the broker, I would like to take my listings with me to work at ABC Realty. The broker is under no obligation to allow that because the listing is in the name of the broker. And there are conflicts all the time in real estate because of that. And ways in which that's managed, we'll save for another occasion, or unless you have a question, because it's really very specific. Okay, the concept of fiduciary is a legal term, meaning that you are legally obligated to perform certain duties to the client that you represent. It is a legal term. You are supposed to offer confidentiality, obedience, accounting, keeping the financial information, also private, loyalty, disclosure, skill, and care. And COALS is simply the first letter in each of these terms. Let me just let me skip a bit and I'll get back. Okay. There are different types of relationships that the broker and you as a sales agent, if you work for the broker, are allowed to have. In many states, probably at least half of them, and in Florida, you operate under what's called a transaction relationship. Excuse me. Let's just go before transaction and look where it says single agency. I guess for maybe the beginning of real estate and maybe the 1930s and 40s until 2008, 7, more or less. A sales agent or broker, will combine them together in this case and call them a realtor, can only operate as a single agency, meaning a single agency. They are only allowed to represent one of the two parties, either the buyer or the seller. They cannot represent both. Why? Because representing both meant that you had confidentiality, you had access to private information from both the buyers and the sellers. That really wasn't very fair. If you knew, for example, a seller said to you, um, I really would be very happy to sell my home for $300,000. So let's list it, and the realtor says, yeah, let's list it then at 325,000. Maybe we can make a little bit more. And the seller says, that's fine. But I really want to walk away from this with 300,000. What if the realtor representing the seller knew exactly what that seller wanted and was not acting in a confidential manner? He could say to a buyer, I'll tell you what, forget the 325, just give me an offer for 300,000. He'll take 300,000, that I know. Well, that really wasn't too fair. So single agency meant that you could only represent one of the two. The problem with single agency for many of the realtors was that if they had represented, let's say they had the seller, they had a listing contract with the seller, and they found a buyer. What if someone called and said, listen, I saw that ad, I saw that sign in front of the house, and you're the agent, I want to buy that. You could not represent the buyer. If the buyer said to you, well, what's a good price? What do you think I should do? You couldn't say anything. So therefore you lost out on the opportunity to make that full commission. There was a way of getting around that, but it's really not necessary to get into it. So what happened? Around the year 2008, after a few years that I was in the business, Florida changed the nature of the brokerage relationship here in Florida and said that we are now beginning a transactional relationship, meaning that, yes, you can now represent the buyer and the seller. The only thing is you cannot really get as involved in the buyers and sellers' private information as you did under single agency. And if that sounds to you a bit unfair, well, it is. But what happened is that the realtors complained, said, listen, I have a listing and then I find a buyer. Why can't I have both sides of the commission? I had to work to find buyers. I went to groups, I spoke, I went to different people around, and I finally found a buyer for my property that I'm listing. Why can't I get that commission? Well, P.S., that's the situation today. So it is, you are under a private, a transactional relationship. Now, I return to this one, the fiduciary responsibilities. Only under single agency do you have fiduciary responsibilities. All of these responsibilities are yours under single agency. But now that we operate under transactional agency, these duties are not as specific as they were previously. Okay, you always have to be open, honest, and fair. And this is the listening contract. Okay, now we're moving into the actual contract, an example of a contract to represent a seller. I put a copy of the contract in Moodle. And it's there. If we have a chance, let's go through this and then we can go back, and if we have any time to look at that. The text gives you also a copy of these contracts, but I put a current one from the state of Florida because I'm more familiar with that one and can explain in better the details of it. Okay, a listing contract is a contract between the realtor, well, let me say broker, because it's only the broker signs it, and the seller. The contract says that the broker will, for a specific period of time, not more than 1 year, represent the seller to sell that property. inside that contract, which cannot exceed 1 year, it's only up to 1 year, it can be renewed. But you know what happens if you have a listing for 1 year and have not sold that contract, sold that property? It is very likely that the seller says something like, Jerry, you know, you've had that contract, you've had my property for a year, you haven't sold it. I'm going to give my house to another realtor. You could argue all you want, but if you have a sense of understanding, you say, I did have a year to sell it and I was unable to do it. It might be a terrible property. Very often a seller believes that their property is worth much more than you as the realtor know it's worth, and a property simply won't sell. It doesn't mean if someone, now you as a realtor, your income comes from commissions, sales. Someone comes to you and says, I know you, or I've heard of you, I know you're very good, I know you're very honest, I'd like you to sell my property. You say, okay, great, you know, there's a chance I can make a commission. But if that seller says something to you, I want to sell my property for this amount, and you, in doing your own research, see that that's far in excess of what a property in this community would sell, I would suggest to you to simply say, I'm sorry. Thank you for thinking of me, but I can't take your property. And if the guy wants to say why, you have to say, your property's been on the market for a year. You have it listed at 300,000. It's been on the market for a year. I'm just, you want it to sell for 300,000. It's on the market for a year, and the most recent transactions were at 200,000. I don't see how I could sell a property when the previous agents couldn't do it either. So I'm sorry. And just kind of just say, walk away. The type of contract that the broker has is the exclusive right of sale. That means that even though it's my listing, Sunshine Realty, Jerry Breshin broker, if Beach Realty finds a buyer, I will get my commission as representing the seller, and Beach Realty gets the other half of that commission. Okay. These other types aren't used because what it is saying is that the agent is in an open listing. The agent will get paid. Actually, I should say the broker, only if the broker finds the buyer. But that doesn't work that way, because you can say, well, I may have an office with 2 or 3 people, and it's very hard for us to find a buyer. But a realty office may have 100 agents, 200 agents. And once that email goes out to all of the agents, say, we just picked up a listing, it's a great property, I'm sure one of your clients is interested in a beachfront property. You know, it's much easier than for a large brokerage probably to sell that property. So that means that if they do it, whoever does it, the broker will still get a part of the contract. Okay, traditional created by a special agent relationship. Remember, we said special agent because it is only for that particular property that you are engaged. Okay, technically it says a contract for services, not for real estate. I mean, you ought to perform a service. You ought to sell a property for a particular client. The MLS system here, multiple listing service, is a service offered by all of the realtor boards in all of the states. Realtors working in that particular location, as I said, I'm a member of the Southwest Florida Board of Realtors. I pay a fee each year to access my board's database. That database is referred to as a multiple listing service. If someone calls me and asks me to sell their property, I take all of the information and upload it to the multiple listing service. That means that all of the, I would say maybe 5,000 agents, realtors in my community as part of that board can, at the stroke of a keyboard, see my property and all of the information related to it. And that's a tremendous benefit. I cannot see listings in a board that is not my own. As I'm saying, I'm a member of the Southwest Board of Realtors. If you have any familiarity with Florida, Orlando, where Disney is, Disney World, is pretty much north central part of Florida. There is in Orlando, as there are other areas, Miami Board of Realtors for that matter too. If someone says to me, you know, I'd like to move to Orlando, or someone says, I'd like to move to Miami, you say, well, I'll help you find an agent, but I do not have access to their MLS system. So that's where a listing contract goes. Okay. What you also get from a client, a seller, you also ask for a seller's disclosure. A seller's disclosure, getting back to the comment I made earlier, that the federal government has passed legislation that a seller has to reveal everything that he or she knows about a property. The seller. That information has to be given now to the buyer. So what you also ask is a form called a seller's disclosure, and it lists everything that a house has, physical and not physical. The roof, any leaks? Do you know about any leaks? Yes or no? Is there any problem with the floor? Yes or no? Is there any problem with the air conditioning? Any problem with the pool? Any problem with anything? Yes or no? So the seller fills that out, and that also goes on the MLS system. With the contract. Okay, no real reason to discuss dual agency. Simply because it's not, it's actually not allowed. It's illegal here in Florida, and I'm sure other states as well. They don't allow you to be intimately involved in both the buyer and the seller because you possess confidential information from both sides that just creates a conflict of interest. Single agency, which is allowed, says you can only represent one of the two, but all agents today, all realtors today prefer to say to their client, if they ask you, what type of relationship do we have? We have a transactional relationship. That means don't tell me everything because I'm also allowed to find the other half. If I'm representing you as the seller, I'm also allowed to go out and find the buyer. Don't tell me everything because I'm allowed to speak to the buyer about your property. So again, if you think that transactional agency is sort of like, isn't that a bit unfair? You're representing both the buyer and the seller. You know, yes, it is. But the way to protect yourself, as the state requires, is for you not to be as obedient and confidential as you were when you had a single agency relationship. Okay, we're not going to talk about dual agency because it's not there anymore. Okay, let's forget dual agency. There's nothing to worry about dual agency. Here's the thing with the, we saw that chart before. Okay, this is what I was just saying, that under single agency, you were considered to represent a principal. And these were your responsibilities: confidentiality, loyalty, obedience, and full disclosure. As a transactional agent, you don't really have a fiduciary responsibility. The person you represent is your customer, not your principal. These requirements are under a limited function. If you say, how do you define that? That's what it is. It's a limited function. Limited liability, limited confidentiality, limited loyalty, little obedience. It's really like walking a tightrope. It's the best of both worlds. You're trying to walk on in a very delicate line that if let's say you represent the seller, if the seller feels, the seller says to you, I'd like to walk away with 300,000, as I gave you the example before, but let's list it at okay, let's change it a little bit, 335,000. So anything over 300,000 I'll be very happy. That's extra money. That would be great. What happens if the seller keeps receiving maybe offers at 290, 295? The seller may feel that you, as the realtor, are communicating with the buyer and saying to the buyer, my guy will accept 300,000. So being I'm also representing you a little bit, why not offer 295? Maybe he'll take 295 and you'll save some money on that. If a seller sees that a number of offers are coming in, but are coming in a little bit lower than what the seller prefers, they're likely to think that their realtor is giving away too much information to the buyer. So it's a very difficult situation to be in, but the reason for it is that realtors all throughout the states that allow transactional agency have said, listen, I represent the seller, but if I find a buyer, I'm obligated to give up my commission, that half of the commission, to another agent. So the governments, the state governments listen to the arguments, say, listen, we don't want to get the realtors in Florida angry, so we'll let them make a commission on both sides of the transaction if they can get it. Okay, the object here, once again, is that in the single agent relationship, these concepts and others, responsibilities, duties, you can call them, he's only giving us a few of them. There's actually more of them. Think of it in the absolute. Absolutely dealing honestly, absolute loyalty, absolute confidentiality. Under transactional brokerage, consider this to be moderate levels of honesty, loyalty, that sort of thing. Okay, this is what I believe he should have started out with in the very beginning. Okay, a salesperson is a sales agent who must work for a broker, and a broker can operate their own agency. The agency are referred to as brokerage. Agency is okay too. The main difference between being a sales agent, it says must work, but in a way, technically, you are affiliated with a broker. You are an agent of the broker, and then the broker who can operate her own brokerage agency. The real difference in the courses, in the licensing, is that if you take the broker course and you pass you have a license. The difference in realtor education is that you are taught how to manage money. Because when a person wants to buy a property, they often give money as a down payment. It's called escrow. So the state wants to be sure that if you have your own office, you understand what is your requirements dealing with money from your clients. The state wants to be very sure that a broker doesn't commit any errors intentionally or unintentionally with a client's money. Another thing is that the broker receives additional education in terms of the legal aspects of having people work with you. If a buyer or seller has a transaction that falls through, it does not work out, and is unhappy, either both parties, buyer and seller, or one, and one of those parties loses money, that party is likely to sue anybody that has been involved in that transaction. If that transaction was handled by a sales agent, they will sue the sales agent. They will sue the broker that the sales agency is affiliated with. They may even sue the broker of the other party. Let's say a buyer wants to buy a property, put some money down, the deal does not go through, the buyer loses the escrow amount that he or she put down, that person will sue anybody that's remotely involved in the transaction. So therefore, additional education, if you want to become a broker, is in the area of legal aspects. What you have to do to supervise your realtors. Because if something goes wrong and you had nothing to do with this, sales agent comes to you and says, I have a buyer, he's giving me some money, we put it down, everything's fine, we're waiting for closing, and then something happens. And then the sales agent says to the broker, do you remember that guy I had to buy that property? And the broker, well, I remember talking to you about it. I don't remember the details. Well, it didn't go through, and he's angry, and he's going to sue us. Well, broker's not going to be very happy. So that's where the additional training goes in. Excuse me. Okay. If you want to offer these services, you are required to have a real estate license. We talked a bit, rent, all of this stuff. We didn't talk about auctioning. We don't know really much about that. Appraising, we talked about that, I think last week, the week before. We didn't talk a lot about leasing, but for all of these, you need a license. And this, again, we mentioned, you are a sales person, a sales agent. Again, you don't work for a broker. You are free to come and go. And the broker is free to actually ask you to leave if they're not happy with your work. And then if you wish to advance your level of knowledge and perhaps open an office one day, you can take the course to become a broker, pass the test, and now you're licensed as broker. Okay, some people can be involved in the field of real estate, but do not need a license. Okay, among those would be attorneys, resident managers, government trustees, executors, those people with power of attorneys. We can add the word, the additional employment of accountants. The reason that these are exempt, excuse me, is because they do not receive a commission for the buying or selling of real estate. They will receive a fee, a fixed fee for representing either party. Once you get into the area of commission sales, then you must have a license. Okay, in order to become a sales agent, and if you wish to continue on and become a broker, there are certain requirements. Each state would have different ones: minimum age, high school diploma. You have to take the course, you have to pass the state course, and if you have acquired some experience, I believe in Florida it's 2 years, you can then go and become a broker. Um, you after passing the sales agent exam, that's the first level, you are a realtor. That means you can engage in the sale of residential or commercial properties. However, if someone wanted to buy or sell a 10 or $20 million commercial building, it is unlikely that they would ask you, fresh out of real estate school, to handle that transaction. But interestingly, there is no separate license to be a commercial realtor. A commercial realtor would be someone who is involved in the buying and selling of things like malls, office buildings, apartment buildings, industrial, everything that you would see over here. There is no special license to do that. I have met along the way sales agents who, after a few years of working in residential real estate, say, you know, I think I would do better if I were to switch over to commercial. Now, residential, you would sell more properties, but earn less commission. Whereas if you worked in the commercial side of real estate, you may have fewer transactions over a period of, let's say, 1 year, but that commission is likely to be much larger. So it's a decision that every agent would make over time. Most agents, once they become sales agents, continue in the residential area. But sometimes they say, you know, I think I'll go switch. In order to be a commercial realtor, go back a few weeks when we talked about appraising properties, trying to establish the value of properties. We talked about the sales approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. Well, if you wanted to get into commercial real estate, you would have to become very knowledgeable on the income producing side of real estate, because all commercial properties are really involved in producing income for the owners. So if you wanted to get into commercial, at some point you would have to become much more knowledgeable than that little section in the text provided, even though essentially that is the basics. You remember we talked about the the net operating income. You remember we talked about the cap rate, the percentage that you would like to earn. Those are the basics of the income producing property appraisal evaluation method. So that's where you would have to become very knowledgeable in having perhaps graduated college with a degree in accounting or a degree in finance would certainly be very helpful for you. If you were to say, you know, I graduated college with a degree in finance or accounting, or maybe I also have an MBA degree in those two areas. We talked all about internal rate of return and stuff, things that came out in that chapter. I think I can handle commercial tax transactions. Well, then you would look for a broker that focuses only on commercial. Okay, you can have certain, it's like ranks in the military. You can have certain designations. These are just a few of them. Personally, I've never been attracted to anything. You are a member of your local association. You actually have a choice to not become a member. You have to pay a fee. It's not not talking about thousands of dollars, a few $100 to become a member. But if you are not a member, you cannot access the MLS system. You cannot access the many services that your local association, I refer to that as your board, your local board has offers. If I log into my local board, there's education that they offer, articles they offer, help. If I have a question about anything, they have lawyers there. I can call in and say, I have a problem. You know, what do you think I ought to do? It's a very valuable service. So to say, well, I have my sales license, sales agent license, but I don't want to do that. Well, how would you know if someone says, I'd like to buy a property in this particular area? What is available for sale? If you said something like, well, my friend or my wife is also a realtor, I can log on to her account. Well, that may work until they find out. But accessing someone else's account for purposes of using the services may have you thrown out, and that's not good. You also can become a national member of the National Association of Realtors, which I started by saying that I believe that is the largest professional association in the US. There's over 100,000 members of the NAR. They also offer, again, information, not at the local level, but information about real estate, education, laws, technical support, and for one fee that you usually pay at the beginning of the year, you become a member for all of that. The chapter moves now into the legal areas of real estate, things you can and cannot do. I try to go through some of these. The basic law dealing with the sale of real estate to particular people is the Civil Rights Act of 1968 and amended a number of years later. It says you cannot refuse to sell to people based on race, religion, things like that. All of this is illegal. I won't repeat them to you. Okay, I wouldn't ask you on a test if, you know, if 80%, there is a situation where a developer, of course, with the approval, can build a community for people 55 years or older, because the government says, okay, I understand that seniors, elderly people, 55 is not elderly, but they 10 more years they will be, would prefer to live in a community where there aren't a lot of children running around. There isn't a lot of noise running around. So even though you cannot in a general sense, refuse to sell to a person who is elderly, but the state does allow certain communities to consist only of people 55 years or older. In other words, if you were 50 and you liked that community and wanted to buy a place in that community, and were told you could not sue that community and say, you're discriminating against me. They actually can refuse to do it. There is, however, kind of a little escape, and that is, even though it's a community of 55 and older, the owner has to be 55 and older, but it's possible that kids can be there for some time. Let's say a parent owns a home in a 55, and their children with kids have to move in. Let's say with COVID, what happened over the last few years, a lot of people, younger people, could not stay in their own place and had to move out and move to parents with kids. Um, so there are some ways in which younger people with children can actually live there, but there are certain restrictions. Okay, where can you find out information? Let's say you are a regular person and you say, I don't want to go to a broker right now, a realtor right now, to find out information because, maybe I had a bad experience or whatever. Where can I find out information about what is available for sale in a particular community? Well, two of these websites, Zillow.com and Realtor.com, you can go to them and it'll ask you the area that you wish to move to or buy in or rent, and it will show you the listings in that area. Excuse me, that information comes from the MLS systems in that particular area. So Zillow and Realtor.com have a relationship, a paid relationship with the MLS systems, the boards in actually all of them. You can go any place. You want to buy in California and you live in Florida, you can actually find out what's available. So if you a citizen would say, you as a realtor find someone who wants to buy and say, well, listen, I think you should be working with a realtor. I'd be very happy to work with you. And the person says, hey, no, it's all right. I can find out a lot of information on my own. Well, okay. You can find out the information on your own, but I would suggest not getting involved in a transaction involving a contract without working with a realtor. Do you remember a few weeks back, we talked about title insurance? What was title insurance? Title insurance is insurance that either the buyer, in most cases, the one that benefits is the buyer, that will investigate whether the seller is indeed the owner of that property. I mentioned earlier today that there are cases which have occurred. A person renting a property offers to sell that property thinking that the owner is in London and would not find out about it, or in Canada, and they put a sign for sale. Whatever papers they have to sign, they have the owner's primary address, and they also know the owner's signature, and they sign for him. That's why you want a realtor working for you, and the realtor will use a closing agent that will conduct a title inspection and to be sure that the seller is the owner of the property. So if you were to find somebody and they say, no, I don't really think I need you, I'm going to buy on my own, you can say to him, what are you doing for title insurance? And if the buyer says, what do you mean by that? Well, how do you know that the person you are buying that property is in fact the owner? Well, he said he was. Well, good luck with that. So again, among the many reasons that a prospective buyer or seller should use an agent. Innovations, again, these are sort of things that have been being done. You have now what's called, I'll just mention the discount brokers. Some people who say, well, we'll buy and sell for you, but at a very low rate, even lower than what is usually considered to be acceptable levels. If you are a buyer or seller and are approached by somebody working for a discount broker that says something like, well, we don't ask for the commissions that other brokers ask for. We do everything for like 2%. Well, that might be okay for you as the seller, because the seller pays the commission here in Florida. You say, well, I would have to pay 6% or 5%, and now I can only pay 2. I save myself quite a bit of money. But anyone performing a service on a discounted rate is not going to do all of the things that the service provider would do under a normal commissions scale. They just can't. If I'm going to charge you 2% for a transaction, I'm not going to go out and do everything that I have to do, because 2% may not cover all my expenses. But if you're charging 5% or 6%, it's because you know at that level you can cover all of your expenses. But people are always looking for ways in which they can make a little bit less money. Okay, this next area talks about, again, commissions and how you derive commissions. I'll let you look at that. It really isn't very difficult, and I wouldn't even. If you were a seller, for example, and you wanted to work with a particular broker, okay, you can ask them these questions in your introductory meeting. Okay, let's say the person wants to sell and has contacted some offices in the area. He called my office, Sunshine Realty, and said, I'd like to sell a property. Can you, I invite you to come over and make a listing presentation. So I'm the broker, and I receive that call. I say to one of my agents, hey, guess what? We just got an invitation to do a listing presentation. I'll sign that to you because you're very good at that. So you make an appointment and go over and meet the seller. The seller can ask, okay, how exactly would you sell my property? How much advertising would you invest? The seller's not going to pay for that. The broker will. Do you have any experience working in this area? Do you know my community? How many years have you been working in real estate? So they will do their due diligence. Okay, this gets back to the fact that we work here under transactional relationships. As a buyer, use them for what information, but don't expect them to give you any confidential information, because they could be representing the seller as well. Don't expect them to be informed it is adverse to the seller, because they could have information about the seller. Give the broker only information they need in order to be helpful. Okay, let me pull up a copy of a listing transaction. I did have it, but I don't know where it went. Okay, don't go away. There we go. Can anybody see that? Anybody still around?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, this is a copy of a listing contract in my area. It's a 6-page contract. Notice seller, buyer. Here you'd put all the information that the buyer will receive. Sometimes things like the appliances are always included. But let's say a person put in an audio visual system, a home entertainment system with speakers, things like that around the room. The seller may not want to leave that. The seller may feel that they would like to take that material with them. So here is where all of the material that stays and all the material that goes is discussed. And this is like anything in real estate, subject to negotiation. So you could put something down that I, as the buyer, want the audiovisual equipment to remain. This contract proposal goes to the seller. The seller may say, sorry, I'm taking that with me. It's very expensive equipment. So I don't agree to that. And then there is the negotiation back and forth. The property, the address, and the legal description that's in the tax assessor's office, the price that you're listing it at, the obligations of the broker, how will the broker be paid, the obligation of the seller. The obligation of the seller is to, again, inform the buyer, the agent, their realtor of everything. It is their responsibility to maintain the property in excellent shape, in excellent condition. Even when a contract is accepted and closing, let's say, is January 1st, and the seller is still living there, he has another 10 days to move out, you are obligated to maintain that property as the buyer saw it. If you want to remove anything from the wall, such as a audio visual system, you have to tell the buyer that I'm doing this. That was not part of the agreement. I'm leaving that there, as you understand. These are the obligations of the seller. You cannot leave the place a mess and say to the buyer, well, here's the keys. Now you have to clean it up. Okay, this section would be the amount of money that the buyer has to pay. Sorry, the selling commissions and all of that. Seller's contract. Seller's disclosures have to reveal everything. Excuse me. And some other information. This is in Moodle, so you can pull that up. I also have in Moodle, excuse me, a copy of the. See if I can pull it up in the last minute, then we'll go. I should have here a copy of a. Okay. This is a copy of a sales contract, as is, there are a number of them. This is simply the easy one I pulled up. Okay, this is an actual one, the name of a person who, this was a seller, this was the buyer, this was the price, 230, this was the down payment of 5,000. This is a whole description. The financing, how is the financing, the place to be paid, and so on and so forth. I'll leave this up there. It is personal, so it's not to be distributed. Okay, I'm going to leave you. Ahmed, I think you're the only one still with us. Wishing you, and if the group, whoever is, hopefully will be viewing the recording at some other time, a very happy and enjoyable holiday season. I will be here. I traveled after the Thanksgiving week, so catching up on work that needs to be done, but I will be here if there's any questions. So have a very happy holiday season and look forward to seeing everybody back here on the 3rd with your midterms already uploaded to Moodle.
Thank you,
Okay.
Professor.
Okay, guys, be well. Enjoy. Bye.
you.